New Landing's Job Chat is brought to you in part by the Prosperity Advisory Group, the next step in your financial future, and by the EBS Group with an unparalleled background in Oracle solutions and services.
You have lost your job, lost your direction. How do you get to a place where you can put yourself back together again and maybe be better than before? We're going to discuss that on today's Job Chat. Our guest today is Cherie Simmons. I'm Hector Silva, and co-host is Don Apple.
Hector, I know I don't like where I am now, but I don't really know how to get to where I want to be. So we're going to find out how to do that today.
And Cherie's going to tell us. Why don't you tell us something about Cherie?
Well, Cherie is one that defines herself as a spot mover. She helps people figure out what spot they're in, what spot they really want to be in, why they're not in that spot, and then how to move to that new spot. So having worked in the field of betterment for 16 years, Cherie is willing to poke bears, laugh loudly, walk into the dark, and be frank with a twist of compassion. Whether she's working as a life coach, trainer, consultant, or curriculum developer, clients describe the results as powerful, fun, and effective. Cherie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good.
Cherie, being out of a job takes a toll on you. So how do you go about rebuilding yourself?
I think it's really interesting because a lot of people, that would be a weird concept, because the way I believe in rebuilding yourself is very different than just like continue being who you were. So many people go back out and they look for the same job they just left. And I think, oh my gosh, you are at a prime opportunity in your life. You have never in your life known as much as you know right this minute. Mm-hmm. You have never had as much as experience as you have had in this moment. And this is like the moment you've been given an opportunity to decide, to really decide who you are, not just who you've been, but who you want to be. One of my friends makes the joke that I will just go, you know what, I think the next job I want to have, and we actually call them past lives. I have many past lives because I just like change who I am, who I'm going to be this time when I grow up. And I'll just say, I'm going to be a professional speaker. And she's like, and the next day you're not just a professional speaker, you won the award kind of thing. But it's because I decide. And the way I decide is based on who I currently am, the experiences I've had, and what pieces of that did I like? What pieces didn't I like? Why would I put myself back into a situation that made me miserable? So I'm very clear about understanding what makes me happy and what makes me unhappy, what serves me and nurtures my skills and talents, what allows me to use my strengths. And those strengths change, I believe. I think we have some inherent strengths, but I think at different times in our lives, because as we grow into different phases or we go through different experiences, things climb to the forefront that maybe were a little more backseated previously. But who do I want to be now? Who do I want to be? And I read a really interesting article recently, and I don't know the name of this goddess from India because it's really long and lots of syllables.
Most of those names are,
yes. So I thought it would be better just to vaguely reference versus butcher,
Okay.
But she is the goddess, I believe, of broken. They described her that she's like a goddess of being broken. And the concept is that she's the goddess when things just break all apart into little pieces. It's about picking up which pieces you want and making them into a mosaic of who you want to be now, so that you choose the pieces and put them back together the way you want. And what I love is she rides on the back of an alligator or a crocodile. And we think that's a pretty fearsome thing. A crocodile, you wouldn't want to, but she gets on the fear and rides it anyway.
Oh, crocodile representing the fear.
Exactly. And I think this is a point where people are like, oh, we're so comfortable with the known. Mm-hmm. And there's that saying, it's easier to wrestle a devil you know than a devil you don't know kind of thing. That we'll set ourselves up to go back into a situation that we don't like just because we know it. You know?
I think a lot of people do that.
They do, but when you're putting yourself back together, you're putting this new mosaic back together.
Right?
You're still you, though.
Well, yeah, that is you.
Yeah, it's just the different parts of you that you like as opposed to the others. So you're not changing who you are.
No.
You're still going to be the same person, but you have made a decision as to who this new person or this person is going to be reflecting out to the world.
Well, maybe you're actually going to honor who you are for the first time in your life. Maybe you're going to actually claim who you are for the first time in your life. I think many of us, you always hear me talk about belief systems and the way we were raised and the beliefs we were given and all of that. But many of us were raised to live someone else's dreams. And, it's the natural thing of a parent to do. We want our children to go after their hopes and dreams. Unfortunately, the hopes and dreams we know best are our own. So we see a little glimpse that Johnny's good at math and we're an accountant, and so we reinforce that over and over, and really Johnny hates math, but he's good at it, but he doesn't bring him that fire at all. Actually, Johnny loves art. But he's told that art doesn't pay the bills. And so that becomes associated as a bad, negative thing, right? And so Johnny becomes an accountant. And that's somebody else's dream. And I'm not saying don't ever be an accountant again, but I am, one of my past lives, I worked for a trucking company. I don't know. You're envious. It was a great job.
I'm impressed.
Thank you so much. And I'm really proud of that job. I was the first non-driver as well as first female ever hired to work with the new drivers and to do their training and go through their orientation and do all of that. And I met a gentleman during that time he was a former CPA. He'd also been a college professor. And really, obviously, well-educated, smart guy. And we got to talking, and I said, tell me what's going on that you're becoming a truck driver. And he had a specific dream he wanted to do, and his dream did not involve being a CPA. It did not involve being a professor. And he had realized that the fastest, shortest route for him was he really wanted to travel and see the country. And so he sold everything he had. And he got rid of all the house insurance and car insurance and all that stuff. And he, being the CPA, he figured out a plan to take all the money from truck driving and invest it over 5 years and be able to retire and do what he really wanted to do. But in the meantime, he could travel and see places he might want to live and all that. He had a plan. But he wasn't ashamed to give up the pieces of him that didn't work, that weren't him.
Big key right there. Big key.
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to make some decisions as to goals and objectives. Where do you want to be? Because if you don't make that decision first, then how do you get there?
Fabulous, yes. You'll hear me talk about Dr. Stephen Covey, and I think everybody should be familiar with his work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, although, forgive me, Dr. Covey, I don't believe he's a good read. That's his dissertation. It's really hard to get through, and most people will say they tried. I tried. I do recommend you can listen to him teach it, like on an audio CD or something like that, and he's a fantastic teacher and that kind of thing, so do that. But he talks about begin with the end in mind. You don't go on a trip without knowing where you're going to. And too many of us just don't decide. And look, you don't need to decide the rest of your life. I just need you to decide right now, even the next 3 months, what would bring me joy? Even the next year. What is it, something that would I've always wanted to do that. One of the things I'll do with some of my clients is they go on a pleasure diet. And I require them that every day they're not allowed to go to bed until they've had some kind of pleasure in their life. And they must figure out what would bring them pleasure. And part of the fun is going out and trying stuff. And I'm like, I want you to go. I want you to go for a walk in the woods. And if you hate it, that's not it. I want you to go try a new kind of food, Thai food. And if you're like, oh my gosh, that is really good, pleasure. But you need to get to know yourself. You have no idea who you are anymore. And a really great way to do it is to think about when you were a child, what did you love to do? All right, I'm going to throw it to you guys. When you were a kid, so I'll give you an example. You know, I know I could see that like panic look on your face, Don. You're all right. You're all right. And I loved making mud pies. All right, loved. In fact, being the overachiever that I am, I didn't just make a mud pie. I made mud dinners. I had roast and potatoes and the mud pie. And my grandpa, he was fantastic because he'd come in from work in the fields and he'd sit down out on the sidewalk with me and he would have dinner with me. He didn't eat it, don't worry. But I loved making mud pies. So what is something you loved to do when you were a kid?
When I was very young, I talked my dad into buying a tape recorder for me.
Yes.
And I would imitate the gentleman that sang Winchester Cathedral. And then I would play it back for my dad, which he never understood why it sounded so nasal. He goes, why? Because he wasn't familiar with the song. He goes, why are you doing that? He goes, I want it to sound just like that guy.
Awesome.
So we had a lot of
Hector?
fun.
I wanted to be a baseball player. And I even got to the point where I got a tryout.
Really?
But they told me that wasn't my dream.
New Landings Job Chat will be back right after a word from our sponsors.
Hello, my name is William Easley, Managing Director of Wealth Management with Prosperity Advisory Group. A job loss is an unsettling experience that almost always challenges finances and lifestyle. Important decisions need to be made immediately that work toward protecting financial security, which include making significant adjustments to day-to-day spending habits. The obvious catch is how to make ends meet on less income. If you should find yourself and your family in this situation, you should begin by itemizing all of your current expenses, no matter how small, and assigning them as either fixed or discretionary. Examples of fixed expenses are mortgage payments or health insurance premiums. Discretionary expenses would include entertainment costs or that weekly dinner out at your favorite restaurant. The key is to eliminate as many of your discretionary expenses as possible and reduce your fixed expenses if able. More importantly, don't postpone these decisions even if you receive a generous severance package. You must tackle them right away. Your ability to maintain a wide array of financial options may depend on a proactive rather than a reactive approach to budgeting so that you can protect your other financial goals like retirement and the assets earmarked for them. Again, I'm William Easley with Prosperity Advisory Group, the next step in your financial future.
Okay.
The
All
nerve
right.
of them.
Weird.
But I
did
got
they
the
do?
satisfaction of getting at least that far.
That's huge. How many people never try out? How many people never try out? Let me tell you the finish line story here in a second, but let me finish this activity first, okay? When I sat down one day, because I realized I wasn't having enough joy in my life, and I did this activity with myself, and I remember the mud pies, I decided right then and there to take a pottery class. Pottery is the adult version of mud pies, if you weren't sure. It is just like it. It's messy and you're in there and all that, and it was phenomenal. And every Saturday for 2 years, I went and made adult mud pies. I wasn't fantastic at it, but it was a blast to do, right? So the key is, maybe you won't turn that into a job, but will you find some pleasure out of it? But it's often a secret, or it's a way to find out the secret of who you really wanted to be, right? So it tells me that for you, maybe being in the radio business or something like that was a desire even when you were young, right? And I think you're one of the fortunate who actually went and followed through on that dream. And so my advice to you would be, how can we now, is that still a dream? Is that still something that brings you pleasure? Is that, because when he told that story, did you see him light up, Hector?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and that's what I look for, is when people light up. And so your dream to be a baseball player.
The dream to be a baseball player didn't work out. But I did find out that what I liked about being a baseball player was being part of a team. So then, as a project manager later, I was part of a team. As a manager of project managers, I was part of a team. So I was able to get that satisfaction of winning as a team.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was a coaching moment from Hector. That's perfect, Hector, because that's exactly what we do. Is another layer of this is, what did you love about it? What was it that got you excited? What brought you the joy? But I would even say to you at this point is like, were you a sports enthusiast? Was it baseball itself, or was it just being a team? Because I would love to figure out if we could find you a way to get into into baseball world, in some way or some capacity. And if you could see his face, you would see that this beautiful little thing began to happen on his face. Because that was like, he almost hesitates to even dream that. But I can see that for you, that might be a little bit of a dream somewhere.
And I don't know that it was
now hold on, I want to hear him
strictly
answer me.
baseball,
Now,
but the sport.
I have filled that part of it by being on the sidelines of the Chiefs games as a photographer every home game.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody out there should be clapping right now, because Hector's a model citizen today. So very nice, very, very nice. And that's the key. And the story about the finish line plays in. Amazing group here in Kansas City called Win for KC. They do a triathlon every year for women, and I got to go and be present at that triathlon, not this year but last year, and phenomenal, by the way. It's amazing to walk up to Smithfield Lake and see 600 women standing there in pink hats, bathing caps, and their families and their children and their people from work, and the signs. And I was a mess before it even started, and I couldn't leave until the last woman, because first they swim, then they bike, and then they run. And I stood at the last corner of that run before they went up the little hill to the finish line. And as they would come around, I'd say, "You did it. You did it. You did this. It's one hill. Push it." I mean, it was just phenomenal to watch their face when you said, "You did this." But right before the last woman came in, came a group of teenage girls who were volunteering. And they followed the woman, and they were saying over the announcement, "Here she is, the last one." And the girls, as we do in our youth, we were saying some things that were a little less enlightened than I would like them to have been. And they're like, "Oh, how embarrassing to have that said over the loudspeaker, you're the last one." And they were saying all these things. And finally I said, "Ladies, you know what? She at least crossed the start line. You didn't even start." And I think that's really important here, because you've got to cross the start line. You've got to decide. When I was getting ready to turn 40, I just drew the line in the sand and said, that's it. If this is, we're going to say half my life, right? I was like, if this is half my life, what am I no longer willing to carry forward? What is just no longer okay to take into the second half? And what is no longer to keep ignoring? No longer okay. And when we put the pieces back together, we decide. People feel in control when they choose versus controlled. Choice, What choices have you made that you're like, okay, I learned from it, and I don't want to make that choice again. And here's people are like, I don't know. Well, then get someone to help you figure it out. Get someone to take you through activities. Get someone to hold your feet to the fire. Get someone to help you dredge up the stuff. Get someone to help you look at why won't you decide? Where's the fear of decision? Because sometimes the not making a choice is a choice, by the way. Doing nothing is a choice. It's a choice of fear. It's a choice of safety. It's a choice of not being wrong. It's a choice. So get someone to help you decide. And yeah, you might be in pieces right now, but by God, they're beautiful pieces. And they can be put together into something that's amazing and that is unique. And you bring to the table that nobody else does. And that's the key. Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Mm-hmm. And going back to what you said about you did it. Job seekers out there, sometimes getting the job that's wonderful. That's what you want. But the fact that you got the interview is you did it.
Celebrate every success.
Everything that you do that takes you closer to that job is a success.
Yes. Yeah. Success and change is not measured in grandiose things. I have had the opportunity to be with a number of people as they were dying. And I have to tell you, what they say at those moments in their lives are very different than what we're talking about every day. They are not remembering these moments where they spent thousands of dollars or they got this fancy boat. They're not remembering the time that somebody threw them a huge lavish birthday party. They are remembering small moments in time where they had an interaction with one person and they felt unconditional love either being given or received. And they say, I wish I had taken more time for those moments. And that's the key. And earlier I said to Hector, there's a great saying that a woman unsatisfied will ask for luxuries. A woman in love will sleep on a board. And I think the key is find what you love, and so many of these things that you think you need right now will be unnecessary because you won't need to, we need the big houses and the boats and the fancy dinners and all the alcohol because we're trying to feel pleasure. And what if
they're artificial?
It's artificial, and what if we just lived a passionate life that let us be who we really are and do what really made us happy?
Well, talking about happy moments, we are so happy we got to enjoy moments with you here today.
Aww, I love you. I love turtles too, though. Did you know? I'm
Yes,
just
I'm
a
sure.
lover. I know.
If somebody wanted to contact you, where could they reach you?
Probably the best way to do that is through my website, and that is www.cherie, Cherie, like Cherie. But don't call me that because I won't
Oh, you
answer
don't
it. It's
like
way
that.
too fancy.
Okay.
So Cherie, Cherie, Simmons, like Gene Simmons, but no relation.
But
still,
none. Okay.
Yeah, so SIMMONS.com.
Well, Cherie, thank you for being with us. And of course, we'll remind you that all of our Job Chat programs are available to you on our website, newlandingsjobchat.org. Just click on the past shows button.
We thank you for listening. And until next time, may your days be full of health, happiness, and success.